Alright, what's up internet bass modding people? I've got the flu today, so don't get too close to the screen. I'm working on a new prototype preamp and it's got a few pots in it that you just can't buy straight off the shelf. So in this video, between blowing my nose, I'm going to be modding some pots. Back in the 90s, when I needed a reverse audio or C-taper pot, I discovered this little trick with these 16mm alpha pots. The idea is that you get a single gang regular audio taper pot in the value that you need, then you remove this resistive wafer inside, and then you install it onto the lower half of a dual gang 16mm pot. And then when you install this wafer on the bottom of this pot, you're actually flipping it upside down, so then you can use the lower gang of your dual gang as a reverse audio taper. It works great. To this day though, you still can't go to J-Car or Altronics and just buy a reverse audio taper pot off the shelf. But of course these days you can jump online and buy C-taper pots really quite easily. One thing that's not easy to find is a C-taper or reverse audio taper pot with a push-pull switch, and that's the first thing I need for my new circuit, so it's the first pot I'm going to mod. So here's my donor pot. It's a 250k dual gang audio taper pot. I'm going to take this lower wafer off, and then when I install it in the push-pull pot, I've of course flipped it over to work that way, and that of course turns it into a reverse audio taper push-pull. The first thing I have to do, of course, is remove this wafer, and it's really easy to do with these. You just have to open these tabs. I'll try and do it towards the camera. And there you go. Dismantle a push-pull, it's really just a matter of, again, opening these little tabs in here. I'm using a very small jeweler's screwdriver for this. You really have to be careful, these will bend and twist pretty easily. So I'm just going to get it started with that. Then I'll shift up to a more robust screwdriver to finish it up. And now I just have to pull this straight up. It's still bound by those tabs, so I'm actually just going to use this sort of flat screwdriver to just get it started by levering it gently. And it's just clicked then too. So now, like I say, the switch is in the up position, and you can just slide that off. Next, you've got this sort of dummy wafer. Then there's this black spacer. Then you can just slide the pot shaft out, and then drop the wiper. So the next step is to lift up these tabs. Then we can pull the top off and the housing. I'm just going to straighten these slightly. That way, when I put the new wafer in, hopefully it'll be properly centered. Notice these little location lugs. Okay, so now I'm just going to close these tabs up. First thing I'm going to do is actually squeeze them diagonally opposite. From side to side. That way it's all sort of centered. I'll just close them down. Obviously there's only really one or two mods you can do with each pot, because these tabs, after they've been opened and closed more than once or twice, they're just going to fatigue and break. So a bit of a one-shot deal, this sort of stuff generally. So I'll just put the shaft back in. You can actually feel a bit of lubricant there. I'm going to put my wiper assembly back on. There is a little lug just in there that you've got to get past. So I'm going to just push that down with my thumbnail and then twist it, because the lug has to be above the wiper. What's next? The wafer, the spacer bushing. Push that on. Then our dummy wafer, like so. Again, I think I'll just squeeze this from diagonal sides, just so it's centered, without closing the tabs just yet. Next, I'll just push that shaft down, and we'll just slide on the switch like that. Then it's a matter of just pushing the switch over these tabs like so, like this. Then we just close the tabs. I sort of have to nudge them forward first and then squeeze them shut, like that, and then squeeze them shut. So now it's just a matter of testing to make sure everything's lined up and that the resistance is correct. It should be 250k across the outer lugs, 270, that's close enough. These are only made, I think, to about a 10% tolerance, or 20, maybe even 20% tolerance. At half rotation, normally with an audio taper pot, you have the anti-clockwise on the middle lug is about 15%. So in this case, about 45 to 50k, but of course this is reverse audio, so I'm going to test that the middle lug and the clockwise lug, and there you are, 44k, and that's the remainder, about 200-ish. So looks like this pot works fine. I might also just double check that its sweep is sort of going to work as well. When you mod pots, you have to be prepared that occasionally it just doesn't work, and the wiper just doesn't wipe properly across the tracks. So you're just going to rotate it slowly and watch the resistance change and make sure it doesn't sort of jump around to 0 or infinity, which would mean that there's some kind of misalignment or something of the wiper and the tracks, and that looks fine. Oh, and for what it's worth, these two parts aren't wasted in this case. I could, for example, put this 250k wafer on the bottom half of this, and it would be a log, anti-log, or what's known as an AC 250k. These are sometimes used as blend pots in certain bases. The next pot I need for my prototype is something that you certainly won't find off the shelf, because I need a stacked pot like this, but instead of two of the same gangs, I actually need two different wafers here. I need a linear wafer, a 25k linear wafer for the upper control, and for the lower control I need a 25k audio taper. This particular pot is a 25k audio taper pot, although it's not written on it anywhere, but I've tested it. And I happen to have found this guy in my parts bins. This is certainly second-hand. It looks quite well soldered and slightly melted. But it's a 25k dual gang linear pot, so I'm actually going to take one of the wafers out of here and put it in the lower section of this stacked pot, because the upper control operates the lower wafer, and obviously vice versa. It's been quite a while since I've modded one of these green pots, and I actually can't remember how the shaft is held in place. I think it might be just a press fit by the looks of it, but we'll find out soon enough. These green pots, for what it's worth, are really good quality, and you often see them with Bartolini preamps and so on. So I presume they're an American-made part, and if you do know the manufacturer of these green pots, let me know in the comments, because I'd love to find out. Going to straighten these up because there's a second cover plate. I'll just lever that off like that. Now, if memory serves, these just pull, they just slide off like that. Ah, well, that's nice. It appears that the shaft is actually being held in place up above here, so we can just slide these parts on and off quite easily. So I'm just going to leave that whole thing intact like that, and we'll move on to this guy. This looks a bit awkward because it is. I'm trying to point it at the camera so you can see what's going on. I'll straighten those lugs up. Just take that guy off. I'm just going to walk that up over these tabs like that. I'll just take that guy off and put our 25k in. Just have to turn the upper arm around so it lines up. There we go. Then what we need is this first plate. And for whatever reason, there's a second plate here. Actually, that looks like one that's just had its solder lug cut off. So I'm not really sure it's necessary to put that back on. In fact, I won't bother. I'm just going to close that those tabs as they are, and I think we'll be okay. So next I'll just quickly test the pots. It's 25k. Halfway around, we're halfway there. It seems fine. I'll test the other gang just in case. Halfway. Yeah, we're about 4.5k, which is about right for a 25k audio pot. And there's our 25. Being able to mod these stacked pots or dual concentric pots is really handy. At the moment there's quite a trend for adding a passive tone control to an active bass. And if the treble and bass controls are already stacked up, modding a pot so that you have, say, a 50k linear gang and then a 250k audio taper gang means you can potentially stack up, say, an active mid control with your new passive tone control, and that may save you having to drill a hole in the bass. The next pot I'm going to mod is this guy. It's obviously a push-pull, but if you look closely, it's a dual gang push-pull, and these are fairly rare. Burns make, I think, 1 or 2 different values and tapers in this. This particular one is 250k audio taper for both gangs, but what I need is a 100k audio taper for one gang and a 10k audio taper for the other gang. So that's the third and final pot I'm going to mod for this video. So I can get my 100k audio taper from this pot, and I can get my 10k audio taper from this pot. I'm going to put the 10k wafer on the bottom so it's not being flipped over, so that'll be fine because that's a 10k audio taper dual gang. This guy is actually a 100k AC pot, what's known as a log, anti-log taper pot. So when I actually remove this 100k audio taper and flip it upside down to put on the top of this, it will actually work the right way. You're probably a bit confused by now. I'm sure if you've watched most of my videos, that happens a lot. But believe me, it'll work. The difficulty here might be, though, that these two are Alpha brand, and this guy is Burns. They look very, very similar, these pots, but I know from experience that the wafers don't always fit, but we'll just have to see as we go along. Obviously, I'm going to have to open these tabs and take the switch off. So there's the click, and that means again that the switch is in the up position, and it just comes straight off. So now this whole thing should come apart. Let me straighten these tabs first, I think. There's our little spacer bushing. Should be able to just pull the shaft right through. And there's our dual-sided wiper. I'm just double checking it's not... Yeah, so here's a trick. You can see that the top side of it, I'm not sure if you can see that the top side of it actually has a longer tube than the bottom side. So I'm going to just make sure that points up when I reassemble. $250k. So now I have my donor wafers from these two pots, 10k and 100k, and I've got the push-pull pot in pieces, but I've come across a problem. If I look at the original wafer and this little aluminium spacer which goes down on the lower side of the shaft on the lower wafer, you'll see that it's a nice fit, but it's not binding. Whereas with my 10k, which I'm going to put on the bottom, it's a really tight fit, and that's not what you want. I could open that hole with a reamer, or it only needs a tiny amount of material removed, or I could use a jeweler's file. But the problem is that this is made of aluminium, and it's, I think, very likely to short on the contact for the wiper, and that will short the wiper to earth, and that'll make the circuit stop working. So that's not a cool thing at all. I'm going to have a scout around. I might even just pull apart a few other pots and see if I can find something that will do this job in plastic. Okay, I found this very cheap and nasty set of machine heads, and I reckon... I reckon that's just about right. But like the aluminium one, this is just a little bit tight in this 10k wafer. So I'm actually going to ream this open ever so slightly. Just a half a turn on both sides. Yeah, I think that's fine. So let's assemble this. First we put the 100K on the top, make sure the B is the right way up. That way this lug in here will be on the correct side. Then we need to get our shaft and our upper bushing, and just put that in like that. We'll close those tabs. I'll just straighten these guys up so our switch can come down more easily. Then we need to put the wiper in with the longer boss pointing upwards. Just have to push it past that little tab. Then our lower wafer, our plastic spacer, and the switch. I have to engage that from the side and just push that down. Now, before I close these tabs, and I'm going to test these pots, I've just taped that temporarily with some masking tape. So let's test these two pot gangs. So it's a 110. Like I say, these are generally made to about a 10% tolerance, plus or minus, I think. And at half, we are at just around about 15%, so 13K. So that looks fine. And let's check the 10K gang. Again at half, we're at 1.4K, which is about 15%, or 14% really. And we wind it up to 10K, and that works fine. So I just have to close these tabs, and I think this guy's also finished. Oh, I just remembered these tabs go out, not in. One of those tabs felt like it was about to fatigue and break, so I'm actually going to put a drop of super glue on there just for good measure. So that's done. So here are all of my modified, customized, multifunction pots all ready for wiring. So I better get on and make the circuit now, I guess. Hope you enjoyed the video. Got lots more planned, so if you're new to my channel, please hit subscribe. And as I like to say at the end of all my videos, I wish I had a catchphrase. Goodbye.